What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with Bungie's weekly update in the form of their TWID blog post. So we'll keep the intro short and sweet. They talk about the raid race initially. They also speak about weapon archetype changes and buffs and adjustments for exotic weapons. Then additionally, they talk about certain playlists and currencies, economy updates, the power refresh, and a handful of other things related to the expansion and the system changes coming up. So if you guys find the video today helpful, a rating really does help me out on the channel, but otherwise, let's get into it. And firstly, a couple of very quick mentions before we get on to TWID. Destiny Rising announced a launch date for the game, which will be August 28th. Obviously, it is mobile only. I know there's some disappointment about that, but if you're interested in playing it, there are details for that now, and I'll link that down below. Otherwise, the Break Free emblem, or the Darkblade themed emblem that we were able to unlock quite a few weeks back now in Heresy, has finally been granted to players. So if you ran the Nightfall on that week, if you remember that little thing Bungie shouted out, you should now be able to get that emblem via the General tab, so keep that in mind. And yes, I was referring to the General tab in your Flare collections. Otherwise, Bungie say we have a new raid ready for July 19th, and there'll be a world's first race. Once again, CB Gray and Evan will be hosting the raid race on the Bungie stream, and they say stay tuned to next week's TWID for info on how to get the emblem that we can see on screen. Certainly looks like a pretty nice one. I'm guessing that's for if you watch a certain amount of the stream or something like that. Otherwise, Bungie started to talk about weapon archetype changes. So firstly, for machine guns, they say they now have a staged reload. Staged reload places checkpoints in the reload animation. When a player cancels a reload animation and it starts again, it will resume from the latest checkpoint. So that's interesting. Otherwise, for glaives, they've reduced projectile tracking strength at very close range to avoid a behavior that made the projectiles less accurate. So hopefully that will be a net positive. Otherwise, for general legendary perks, for reconstruction, they've increased the amount of ammo transferred per activation from 10% to 25%, and Paracausal Affinity now has a visible timer for the buff, so we'll know how long it actually lasts for. For kinetic tremors, they say they've decreased the shots to activate on certain weapons and subfamilies. High impact autos require 9 hits down from 12, aggressive and high impact scouts require 5 hits down from 6. Hand cannon subfamilies have received specific tuning. Aggressive hand cannons require 4 hits down from 6, adaptives require 5 down from 6, and precisions still require 6 shots to activate, so interesting changes for that. Otherwise, for 1-2 punch, it now works with all melee abilities, and the active perk time is increased from 1.22 to 3 seconds, so a good change for that. For attrition orbs though, they've increased the perk progress by 20% across the board and reduced the perk progress by 80% with area denial grenade launchers. This is surprisingly not as noticeable as it sounds, according to Bungie. Otherwise, they've increased the perk progress by an additional 30% on swords. For Eager Edge and Valiant Charge, they say, while active, melee search angle is now reduced by 50% at the start of a lunge range and by 88% at the edge of lunge range. This requires the player to look more at their target to strike it, improving specific target acquisition in PvE, and requiring a more direct look in PvP. There'll certainly be some thoughts about that. Otherwise, for Chain Reaction, Dragonfly, and Firefly, they say they no longer use weapon archetype scaling against combatants and instead use a new perk damage scaling that's more normalized between different weapon types. And they say the biggest winners include fusion rifles dealing 41% more chain reaction damage, SMGs dealing 43% more, autos dealing 47% more, linear fusion rifles dealing 165% more, which was probably needed for anyone to really consider that perk on a linear. Otherwise, for swords, it's 123% more. And those last 2 changes apply to minor combatants, which generally is the primary focus of the perk anyway. And next up, they got on to changes for specific exotic weapons. So for Vigilance Wing, Last Stand bonus is now active when running solo in PvE activities. Then on Hierarchy of Needs, players now gain charges of Guidance Ring with any hit from the weapon, and now only need 3 charges to deploy the ring, which is nice. The Guidance Ring duration is also increased from 13 to 20 seconds, and it now rotates to face its owner. On top of that, players are now limited to 1 Guidance Ring in the world per player, and spawning a second will remove the previous ring. And all bows now spawn missiles when fired through an allied guidance ring, which is a pretty big change as well. So it's certainly going to be worth checking out Hierarchy of Needs. Otherwise, on Deadman's Tail, each stack of Cranial Spike now grants 3.4% increased damage versus combatants to a maximum of 17% of 5 stacks, plus 1 round reloaded into the mag. For duality though, they've added a secondary activator for on black wings, and it now gives the buff when landing most of your pellets on a target. For the navigator, they say when the user has woven mail, it increases damage by 25% in PvE and 5% in PvP, plus it has increased ammo generation stat. That might be worth taking for a spin. Also on the Wicked Implement, it's now a rapid fire RPM. It takes one additional hit to start slowing and to freeze to account for the faster rate of fire, but they've increased the mag size to 20 and it now intrinsically is anti-overload. So I think that's going to come out as a buff. Then on the Heart Shadow, they're increasing ammo reserves. They've also reduced the cost of heavy attack to 3, down from 4, and they've added defeats while shot in the dark is active, make you invisible once more. On Worldline 0 though, they're increasing the lunge distance of the heavy Tesseract attack by 3 meters. They've also removed the ability to chain 2 blink attacks back to back, but they've added a new effect where defeating a target with Tesseract allows you to Tesseract again for a short time, and these extra blink attacks cost less ammo and consume less guard energy. So then that sounds pretty cool as well, but for Devil's Ruin, they've removed the fire on release behavior, and the beam is now behind a special reload. Kills with the weapon also make fire sprites, and picking up a fire sprite enables the special reload. Beam also now scorches on hit and ignites on kills, with an increase to the magazine of 20, plus it's now intrinsically anti-unstoppable. So that sounds fairly juicy. Otherwise, on Winterbite, they've reduced the enhanced melee damage with ammo to plus 20 versus bosses, which is down from plus 50. And this is to account for them now being able to receive melee damage bonuses from a variety of sources. Plus, it is now anti-overload as well. And then we have a bunch of anti-champion changes. So the following weapons have not been rebalanced, but have been given anti-champion capabilities. So Unstoppable is Queenbreaker's, Salvation's Grip, and Dragon's Breath. Overload will be Tractor Cannon, Darcy, and Two-Tailed Fox, and conditional finality can be anti-overload or unstoppable depending on which element is active. So largely there, a set of fairly good buffs by the sound of it. Of course, loads of things are changing in the sandbox, so time will tell, but some of the additional effects applying to exotics and things actually sound pretty cool. So share your thoughts about those down below. Otherwise, Bungie talk about power in Edge of Fate here, and they say, we've removed weekly barriers and are giving you more agency in choosing how you level up. Earning power will be more intuitive than ever before, with most activities offering a reward forecast that enables you to plan for your rewards. Increase your power by overcoming greater challenges and earn higher tiers of both armor and weapons that come with additional stats and benefits, as of course, higher tiers of gear in general seem to be tied to power level moving forward. They also point out there will be a power band moving between 10 power and 200 power. This is before we get to seasonal power, and loads of activity content will exist in that power band, including the entire Edge of Fate expansion pack, event activities, and all legacy content, even the new redacted raid. So seasonal power is something which really will be working and moving into much later on in the episode, or should I say the DLC, after the initial sort of month by the sounds of it. And they point out, during the climb to power cap of 200, we'll be able to earn tier 1, 2, and even the occasional tier 3 drop. That's with that connection between the power and the gear tiers that we earn. But beyond that, of course, we get the seasonal bonus power. Seasonal bonus power will live right on your weapons and armor instead of the seasonal artifact. By overcoming harder challenges in PvE or challenging yourself in competitive or trials, you'll earn gear with greater amounts of seasonal bonus power that will increase your level beyond the power cap. Again, there are no weekly limits on how much progress you can earn, so the power climb is available for as long as we want and as much as we want, essentially. Seasonal bonus power levels are limited to the current season, and any weapons and armor above the power cap will be back to 200 at the start of the next season. And generally, earning high enough grades from portal activities will give consistent growth all the way to 400 power, and total power 400 to 450 rewards will come initially from newly upgraded Prime Engrams, which drop both higher power and higher gear tier loot. But beyond that, in Ash and Iron, we'll be able to earn power all the way up to 550. Those who reach 500 power will be rewarded with regular drops of the highest tier of weapons and armor, tier 5. And so again, getting sort of really high tier loot is something for a bit later on in the season with this new sort of progression grind. And obviously, because a certain amount of seasonal power will reset, it means that the tier of rewards will again be improved later on in most seasons for most players, right? Unless you play a very insane amount, which of course some people will. So it's a really big shake-up, and share your thoughts on the changes down below. Otherwise, they talk about destination materials, and they say those which stopped dropping from resource nodes starting in Witch Queen and later only granted Glimmer or Reputation will be fully deprecated with Edge of Fate. So Raoul will no longer accept destination materials and then no longer have any value. So after July 15th, we can safely discard all of the materials that you can see on screen right there. For playlist changes though, for Vanguard Ops and Onslaught, they say it's been built to be part of the core game activity engine and will drop new tiered rewards. That means the older gear, the Brave Arsenal, needs to be moved to a different place. So Brave Arsenal weapons will be moved to part of Xur's wares. Only the standard non-foil versions of the weapons will be available, and Zavala will no longer offer Onslaught attunement. Then on Nightfalls, they say while they remain accessible in the World tab, they no longer work on a weekly rotate tab, but on a daily one, and will include all current Nightfall strikes and battlegrounds. So Nightfall weapons are now legacy gear. The Nightfall loot pool will be updated to include all previous Nightfall weapons that have origin traits. And rewards are on a knockout list until all Nightfall weapons have been unlocked. Also, Grandmaster Nightfalls no longer exist as their purpose and function has been transferred to the portal screen and conquests. So this affects older playlists, of course. And they also say activities that don't offer tiered gear, like legacy rituals, will no longer have a reputation track on their vendor. Also, ritual engrams have been removed and legacy focusing remains, but costs have been updated with the removal of ritual engrams. On top of that, they say the vendor reputation system in general has been removed from vendors in the tower, with the exception of Hawthorne, and the new approach comes hand in hand with a rebalance of rewards through the game. Removing these reputation tracks also allows us to be more rewarding with currencies and gear that we drop from activities. And given that the portal has such a heavy focus, I was kind of anticipating that Bungie were going to be doing this with a bunch of playlists, so give us your thoughts. Otherwise, Xur gets a bunch of changes too, so Xur will not sell legendary armor in Edge of Fate anymore, and all legendary armors will move to Ada 1. She'll sell them for cosmetic purposes. Otherwise, Xur will now sell 2 exotic armor pieces per class every week. One will be from the existing pool of exotics that Xur has always sold, one will be from Beyond Light, Witch Queen, Lightfall, or Final Shape pools, and players must own the expansion the exotics are associated with in order to purchase them from Xur. They will continue to sell catalysts, but they've been moved to the Strange Gear submenu. And Xur will also sell exotic class items every week. Players will still need to earn the initial one from Dual Destiny or Festival of the Lost before Xur will allow players to purchase class items. I guess that confirms it's probably still going to be a thing for Festival this year. Otherwise, Xur will sell 9 legendary weapons per week, 3 weapons per slot. Plus, Xur gets the Brave Arsenal weapons, the non-holofoil versions, and Legacy Nightfall and Trials weapons, with rare chances at Adept weapons showing up as well. Standard weapons cost 17 coins, Adepts will cost 41, and Xur has weapons from Echoes, Revenant, and Heresy added to the inventory as well, so a rare chance at Adept Heresy weapons, which is pretty wild. Plus, Xur has had Legacy Comp and Crucible weapons added to the inventory as well. So even big changes coming for Xur right there. Finally though, they say new exotic armor in Edge of Fate will be unlocked by completing the legendary campaign and not through Raoul. Novel focusing for exotic armors from past expansions will be available to players immediately with no need to decrypt engrams to unlock it, and the focusing submenu has been reordered to put the most used screens up first. So there we go, a very hefty TWID right there. A lot of changes, whether it's the weapon stuff, which I think largely sounds positive at the minute. Obviously, more kind of quality of life and system changes, which, again, are going to take our minds a while to sort of get our heads around, given the depth of changes we're going to see in Edge of Fate. Some of it sounds a bit daunting, but at this point, I kind of just want to get into the game after that update and see how everything's looking. So share your thoughts below, guys. If you've enjoyed the video and found it useful, a rating really does help me out here on the channel. But for now, cheers for watching, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.